Welcome. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about tobacco use and the negative effects it has on your body as well as your finances. I'd like to try and persuade you today whether you're a current tobacco user to stop using or whether you've never tried it to just not explore that option. To understand the negative effects of tobacco, we first need to understand what is in tobacco. And there's three major components. Those are tar, nicotine, and carbon monoxide. The first one, tar, is a byproduct of burning tobacco. It's dark and sticky in composition, and it contains many carcinogens, which are cancer-causing agents that are very bad for your body. The second component is nicotine. This is probably the one most of you have heard of. That's the first thing that's associated with tobacco is nicotine. And yes, nicotine is the addictive substance in tobacco. It's highly addictive, and that is what causes people to continue using. It's colorless and odorless, and it's also very poisonous in concentrated amounts. And yes, it is considered a drug. The third component of tobacco is carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is also colorless and odorless, and it is toxic, and it is also tasteless. Carbon monoxide causes something called atherosclerosis, which is basically a buildup of fatty tissue on the walls of your cells and arteries. It also, one other negative effect of carbon monoxide is it reduces the amount of the amount of oxygen your blood can carry, which affects your breathing and affects your body. That's why you see sometimes people smoking cigarettes, their face or fingers will turn white because there's less blood in the body. Now that we've gone over what's in tobacco, let's talk about the types of tobacco. The first type of tobacco, which you've probably heard of, is smokeless tobacco. And this can actually be narrowed down into snuff and chew. Snuff is very fine grain. You often find it in a can. And chew is pretty much just cut up leaves into strips. Both of them you place in the mouth and you suck on the juices and you spit out the saliva, and that's the way the nicotine is delivered to the body. Some popular brands you've probably heard of are Copenhagen, Grizzly, Redman, Beech Nut. You often see these at gas stations or even grocery stores. And they are used in the mouth and not smoked. It is estimated that 8% of high school students use smokeless tobacco, while 3% of adults use smokeless tobacco. There are over 3,000 chemical compounds in smokeless tobacco, all of which are not good for your body. The second and most common type of tobacco use is cigarettes. I'm sure everybody here has heard of cigarettes and knows many negative things about them, but cigarettes are inhaled, and they usually come in a pack of 20. You can also buy them in a carton, and they are the most common form. And the third and final type of tobacco use is pipes and cigar tobacco. Pipe tobacco it looks a little bit like chew, but you put it in the pipe and you light it on fire and smoke the smoke out of the pipe. Cigars are similar. They are much bigger than cigarettes, and they're often darker in color, and you do not inhale cigars. That may make people think that they're not as harmful, but they still are, and they still can be addicted. Cigars are on the rise right now with young men and women in the U.S., and it is estimated that 4.5 billion cigars are consumed by Americans every year. Now that we've gone over what types of tobacco there are, let's go over the health effects, which is the main reasons of why not to use tobacco. The first health effects I'd like to talk about are smokeless tobacco health effects. Smokeless tobacco health effects include the most common one, which you may have heard of the word leukoplakia. This is basically a precancerous form of something that happens in your mouth. It's also called hairy tongue. It is a white, rough, thick white patches that happen in your mouth, on the tongue, and in your gums, and it's rather disturbing to look at. It can cause cancer, which is the scary part. The other negative effects of smokeless tobacco are lip cancer, pharynx cancer, larynx cancer, stomach cancer, esophagus, and some other minor effects of smokeless tobacco are stained teeth and bad breath. Now that we've talked about smokeless tobacco effects, let's talk about the bad health effects of cigarettes and pipes and cigars, any smoking tobacco. The most common problem with smoking tobacco is respiratory disease. Obviously, because you're inhaling the smoke with all those carcinogens and tar and everything, and it just, over time, it can really ruin your body. It can give you something you've probably heard of called emphysema, which is an incredible reduced lung capacity. Many people with emphysema cannot breathe on their own and are strapped to a machine all day. It can also give you heart problems. It is estimated that you are 70% more likely to die from a heart problem if you are a smoker. It can also cause heart arrhythmia, which is basically an irregular heartbeat. Other things it can cause are atherosclerosis, increased good cholesterol, blood thickening, allergies, diabetes. Those are the main health effects of tobacco. But the reasons that why not to use tobacco don't stop at just health. It also starts at finances. Using tobacco is incredibly expensive. It hurts your wallet as well as your body. One example I'd like to give you to illustrate this point is cigarette smoking. Many people who start smoking cigarettes get up to roughly a pack a day. That's a pretty good general rule of thumb. And at $5 per pack, it adds up quickly. For example, if you smoke a pack of cigarettes per day at $5, that's $1,800 a year. That's incredibly expensive. That's not good for anybody's budget, and it also can add a lot of other expenses because of the negative health effects. Just to wrap up, I'd like to say that tobacco is not only bad for your body, but it's also bad for your expenses. It can, over time, cause an addiction which really hurts your body as well as your wallet. And the main thing to remember is it just has little or no reward. There's nothing good that can come out of tobacco use except for health effects and financial effects. At this time, I'd like to open it up to questions to the audience. Yes, question.
And do you have any tips about quitting tobacco?
That's a great question. That's something that I didn't cover. But yes, there are some tips at quitting tobacco. The number one tip to quitting tobacco may sound very simple, but it's you have to have the right attitude and be committed. It's not something that's easy to do because nicotine is a drug that you are addicted to, and it starts with deciding if you're going to do it. There are also products available such as Nicorette, there's chewing gum, there's patches you can wear that wean you off of nicotine use, and over weeks and months you can really win that battle. But it all starts with a positive attitude. Great question. Yes?
I've heard chewing tobacco or smokeless tobacco is a safe alternative to cigarette smoking. Is this true?
Great question. I have heard that too, and it could not be more false. Although smokeless tobacco does not put you at the risk for as many respiratory diseases, it just comes along with a whole another set of problems. It can cause lip cancer, even stomach cancer if you're swallowing some of those juices. It can cause what we talked about earlier, leukoplakia, which is basically pre-cancer, as well as bad breath and stained teeth. So short answer, no, it's not any safer. That's why when you even buy smokeless tobacco products, it says in very large words, this is not a safe alternative to cigarettes. Great question. Yeah, question.
You gave a fantastic financial example about smoking. Do you have any other financial examples that might kind of help us understand what kind of hurt it does on the wallet?
Great question. I did give a smoking example. I can also think of a smokeless tobacco example. Say you use, a lot of heavy users of Copenhagen, which is snuff, will use 3 cans a day. And Copenhagen is about $4.50 a can. So if you're looking at it that way, I think it'd be just, it's like $5,000 a year. And when you think about $5,000 a year plus all the health effects you're almost guaranteed to have, it gets incredibly expensive. So going back to your question about smokeless tobacco being safer, it's not any safer and it's not any cheaper. If there are no other questions, I'd like to conclude the speech and thank you guys for coming, and I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.